Hi, this video is an overview of my exploits into the world of digital modes, primarily in this case WSPR, WSPR, Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, and then another follow-on video around FT8, which allows full two-way QSOs. Hope you enjoy the videos. So although both my rigs are Yaesu, the 991A has a two-way USB connector and a built-in sound card, and the 5000 doesn't. What this means is the 991A just needs a USB lead to connect to the computer, and then you just need the software and the associated configuration time to get on the air. The USB lead on the 991A provides both two-way CAT control, computer-aided transmission, plus the data traffic needed for any digital mode, and also using the built-in sound card. The 5000 needs an external interface to act as both as the CAT and the general digital interface. Now, I previously had a CAT lead, but no sound interface lead, so I purchased a Yaesu SCU-17, which is the sound card interface and USB interface for Yaesu rigs in general. There are other interfaces from other manufacturers available, but I plumbed for the Yaesu model. And unlike the single USB lead for the 991A, the SCU-17 uses the RS-232 port and the RTTY packet connections on the rig, and then a single USB lead connects the SCU-17 to the computer. So WSJT-X, if I fire that up, let's put that down a bit. So you get two screens. This is a waterfall display which will populate as time progresses, and this is your sort of send and receive screen. And in terms of CAT control, choosing the band down here will change the rig not only to the right band but the right frequency for the digital mode that you're using. When you first start setting your system up, in here, File, Settings, there are a number of things you need to do in here in terms of entering your call sign, your locator, and there are a lot of options that you just leave as default. You choose your radio. There's a long list of rigs. Now I use OmniRig already, which is an interface for my logging software, and I found if I actually chose the FTDX5000, which is on here somewhere, there it is, I couldn't get the software to work, but choosing OmniRig, because that's already running, and that's another option on here, that worked. So there's OmniRig. So that's something to consider. Again, leaving these settings as default. CAT, because we're using CAT control, COM ports, which I'll just cover in a second, and nothing much else you really need to change. But there are other videos that go into this in far more detail, which you can find on the internet. So I'll just talk a little bit about COM ports and sound cards. Down here, if we right click on the speaker and open our sound settings, you can see here we're using a microphone and speaker from the laptop, so you can see this codec option has appeared and I've chosen that. Here on output we're still on the computer speakers, but it needs to be that USB lead, so codec again. And if you're unsure of what your options are on here, if you fire up your PC or laptop with nothing connected, you'll know what the core settings are, and then when you add the rig you'll be able to see the options pop up, so that's quite a handy tip. And now we'll look at COM ports. So for COM ports, if I minimize these two screens and type device manager into the search and click on that option there. And here pops up the device manager screen. My mouse is unresponsive, there we go. And there you can see under the ports, the two COM ports that the SCU-17 is using, COM port 6 and COM port 7. Now if the 991A was plugged in, there'd be different COM ports, like 3 and 4 or something. And again, if you're not sure, look at device manager on your PC with nothing plugged into the rig, nothing plugged into the PC, and then plug the rig in, and you'll suddenly see, or your interface, you'll see which COM ports are appearing. So that's how we know which COM ports to use in the settings of the software, and if you're using an interface like OmniRig. So here we are back in the WSJT-X software, selecting a mode, Whisper, and if we select a band, it's currently on 40. If we go on to 20 meters, then you might hear the rig change as well. The rig's just changed over, and if I just pan down a bit, you can see there we've moved on to the correct frequency. Now, Whisper by definition is a low power propagation mode, so if I turn the power down, you can see here to 10 watts, which is 10 watts maximum. Using the audio levels on the SCU-17, and I can adjust that down even lower, so I can run say 5 watts, which might be more usual on Whisper propagation. Another thing with the 5000, and depending on the settings of your rig, it needs to run in USB mode, but it needs to take its audio from the data port, not the microphone. So if I move around to the right, if I just unlock this a bit, and on this menu button, there's different ways of doing this, but I've got this menu already set up for mic selection, currently front, and I can change that to data, press and hold, and that's now set. So if I bring that back up, it's onto data. So that's a quick way of changing the USB setting and the data setting on the rig for the mic. Now, what I'm planning to do is actually change the, if I move around again, just a bit confusing, change this packet setting in the rig, which I believe, according to internet forums, is set too narrow for FT8 and Whisper. So if I just used packet alone for frequency shift keying, that might not work very well, whereas USB's got the full audio range. So if I delve deeper in the menu, I can change that and not use USB and not have to do that. I would just literally hit that button and then I'd be away. So that's something specific to this rig, maybe different on your rig. So back to the software, and you can see while I've been looking at the rig, the waterfall has started recording signals. If I turn the volume up, very hard to hear if there's anything there, and that's the beauty of digital modes. They can be successful below the levels to which we would be used to in listening to audio. And down here you can see the receiving level, and you need to keep that in the green and generally around that midpoint. And again, you can adjust your rig settings to achieve that. And again, while we've been looking at the rig, you can see I've been receiving signals, time, frequency, there's the call, and there's the grid, and some other information about the distance, the signal strength, and deviation and drift, and if you look up about Whisper, you can find out more about those in terms of how clean and accurate the signal is. So you can see here we've been receiving a number of signals. We've not done any transmitting. We've just been receiving on 20 meters, and that box is down there is ticked, which is upload spots. So I'm acting as a receiving station at the moment, and I'm uploading into the Whisper network. So we'll be able to see where these stations are on a map. So I'll just pull up now. There's different software, but I'll just pull one up to show an example of what we've received. So here we are on WhisperNet, whispernet.org, which is the main Whisper network database and reporting site, and there are other sites that use the same data but show it in a different way. Now I haven't filtered this at all yet, so if I go on and update for 20 meters and I show my call G0CNN and the time period set for 10 minutes and update, and now we need to zoom in. And there you can see, while we've just been tinkering around in the shack, these are the stations that I've heard in that period on 20 meters, sorry. And I'm currently using an off-centre fed dipole. So that's instantly giving me a view of how well I'm receiving at the moment on this antenna. And if we transmit, you get the same information showing your transmission. Now this is where some of the websites differ. In some websites it's easier to distinguish between reception and transmission. In some websites, including this one, they get a bit jumbled up, so it can be quite tricky. So if we go back to the main software, you can see, and I don't know if you can, if I zoom in and pan a bit, you can see it's in 2-minute intervals. Whisper works on 2 minutes of transmit and 2 minutes receive, and you can see this is the receive segments, and these are the stations I've been reporting on. So I could leave this running and it would act as a reporting service on the network, and other stations would be using this information, as we will be in a minute, to show how well their transmissions are being received. And you can just keep refreshing this and refreshing this, and you'll get a revised graph. This one's a bit of a pain, you have to keep going back in every time. There may be ways of storing the settings, I don't know. Right, so now for some transmitting. So in terms of transmitting, you have an enable TX button, a halt TX button, so fairly self-explanatory. TX next, so that's to force it to transmit on the next cycle. And this is a transmit percentage. You would normally transmit for a lesser period of time than the time period you're looking at. So 50% half the time, you could go down to quarter, 10% and so on. Clearly, being a weak signal mode, you're meant to be using low power, and your rig won't like you. Thank you for using high power for 2 minutes solid transmissions, which is what this does. So that's on 10 watts. That's the power setting that I'll be reporting. I'll change that down to 5 watts, and I'll use the SCU to reduce the 5000's minimum power from 10 watts down. It's just a case of reducing the audio. So we click TX next, enable TX, and then the rig will kick in automatically from the software. So I can see on the screen The countdown for the 2 minutes is getting close. It's at 100 seconds out of 120 seconds. So this is the receive mode. So in about 15 seconds, this rig will go into transmit, and I can reduce the power below the 10 that's going to come up on there by using the adjuster on the SCU-17. So here we are, transmitting 10 watts. I had it on SWR, I wonder why it was 0. So now I can reduce that down to 5 watts. And you don't want to overdrive. The ALC is really low. You would normally on voice have it up here, but you're right down the bottom. So you can see there 5 watts. SWR is rock bottom, and you can see the signal going out. And if I move, this might jerk a bit, if I move this up and focus back on the screen, you can see at the bottom the green bar moving along. That's 52 seconds out of 2 minutes, and we're in our enable TX mode, and the waterfall, which is just out of shot up there, has stopped refreshing. So basically we'll transmit till that green bar gets to the end. So that's 2 minutes of transmission, and then we'll see where we get. So here we are on another reporting tool. This is WSPR.VK7JJ.com, another WSPR reporting tool. Uses the same database, just presents it in a different way. And excuse the noise if you can hear the fan of the rig going, which has just stopped. That's quite handy. So 200 spots, that's how many it's going to look for. Time period 1 hour, all bands. Well, we know I've just transmitted on 20 meters, and my transmission call was G0CNN. And if we do a search, there we go. That was a bit of a long think. So here are the results of that transmission period, and you can see there it's recorded that I was transmitting using 5 watts. And again, distance, locator, lots of information there. So that's all within that 2 minute window. I don't know how many's there. There isn't a count, but that's a lot. And you can, if I go to map up here, and zoom in, and remember this was just my transmission that you've just seen, not the receive. Loads of hits in Europe, down to just off Africa there, and into the east coast of America, all in 2 minutes on 5 watts. And you can see from the, if I go back to home, you can interrogate this information for different time periods, different bands, and you can compare antennas. This one would be a tricky one because of the 1 hour minimum, but that other website I think has 15 minutes, so you could swap an antenna. Hopefully if conditions haven't changed, you can compare. So that's the intro to WSPR. Hope you found that useful. I'm sure a lot of you are into this already, but if you're like me, you're starting from scratch. That gives you a little bit of an insight. There's a lot of information on the web, and you should find information both on the version of software you're using and the rig combo you're using. I'm currently using, which is the latest version at this point in time, the summer of 2020, version 2.2.2. So the next video I'll do a little piece on FT8 using the same software. Hope you found that useful.